I'm trying, but I'm gonna do my best to see if I can.
Okay, so we
Recording
apologize.
has started.
The party has started?
That too, but no, the recording, Ramona.
Oh, okay, there we go.
And yes, let's get the party started.
Yeah, there we go. So we're preparing to move into our first phase. So thanks to everyone for being patient with us. Of course, you know, technology works great yesterday as we're going through and just running through this, and today it just won't work when it counts, right? So looking forward to moving this forward. Hopefully I can meet some of you folks at WEFTEC in October. Let's go for, this is our agenda. We're going to go through the work plan for the first 3 months, some categories of challenges for change management, our off-the-shelf methodologies for change management and some examples, the whether the methodology is applicable to each of our own cultural paradigms. And then we're going to talk about collaboration and then do some open discussion. For these next 3 months, what we want to do is identify off-the-shelf change management methods and have everyone kind of share any case studies or any information they have. Last meeting, we asked everyone to say in the chat if they are using some sort of off-the-shelf method, and we got no responses. So I just want to verify that in this group, no one's actually using an off-the-shelf change management method. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. All right. And then we want to review and assess any of the off-the-shelf options that we think might be important for us to do. Cello or Scott, any input on this slide?
No, I think you're doing great. I think I started the recording, but I do not see your screen, but if others do, that's good. So we may just have an audio thing.
Okay.
Mike Barnett, what do you think if I get off the meeting, it's going to still keep the call? It's not going to shut down the call, right?
Yeah, I think it'll still survive. And I did see the recording message, so it is. I think it's recording.
It's recording. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll briefly come out and come back in. Hopefully the problems, if I restart PowerPoint, will diminish, and I'll restart Teams as well. So I'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay. Great.
Sorry.
So in our survey, we looked at what the feedback was on challenges with change management, and it's pretty similar across the board. Most people, you know, the challenges are developing the why, the lack of follow through, not having clear communication, organizations not having an urgency to getting things done. No space for new solutions. You know, there's a whole litany, the 7 R's. Those were the things that came back as challenges or barriers to change management. We then had issues, you know, and on the people side, in terms of how the workforce and organizational culture view change management and how that part of our organization actually impacts whether or not we move forward in our own organizations. Trust is a big issue for many organizations based on the survey and the feedback that we received. An overemphasis on spreadsheets, technology, check the box aspects of change management, and too little emphasis on the organizational culture and how people react to change management. I think the great thing about this team is that we have the workforce development and the organizational culture teams to pull from and to get some good feedback and guidance on how we can make sure whatever we're developing can help to build that trust and build in some of the things that organizational culture and workforce see as necessary. For many organizations, the employees or the workforce don't think that it's a priority. They feel overworked, and this is just not another thing that they want to do, and they're hanging on to their turf. You know, everybody wants to have their documentation. It's job security, and they don't want to share, and they don't want to look at their process because, you know, immediately you think, well, I'm going to be written out of the process. So we want to combat some of those thought processes to help move change management forward. Again, you know, strongly disagree. Most people did not have well-documented processes or guidelines. Some people have been trained and certified, a very low score for most organizations. Most of them don't have staff that are trained on change management, and very low score on applying the most change management to the most important processes or things going on in the organization.
Ramona, this is Scott. In the chat, Zanetta said that they're using ProSci, but they're in their infancy, but they do have some certified trainers, and I think that that might even be similar to your situation and that of others. You know, Zanetta, is that a commitment that you guys have made to go that way, or what's your posture on that?
Yes, sir, for now.
Yeah, what about others? You know, Ramona asked that question before. Nobody wanted to say, yep, we're all good on that. but I recall from earlier meetings that there were some organizations that were getting certified on it. Anyone else? I know DC Water had done a fair amount, and they're not on the line, but anybody else? No.
This is Cello. Just to mention, I'm back. I still don't see the screen, but I'm back at least with audio. And I will send a link. I sent a link previously to it's about 30-minute long presentation that DC Water, Makeda Weaver, did about their use of ProSci. So it may be interesting because they have like 15 people trained and certified in ProSci and are, you know, using it. So it might be interesting just to, unfortunately, Makeda is not with engaged right now from DC Water, but she gave a pretty good presentation.
Okay. Okay. And for some reason, I can't see the chat.
No, it's okay. I can track the chat, Ramona, and
Okay.
And make sure that we're dealing with it. Okay.
Okay. Did I jump ahead? Yes, I jumped ahead. There we go. So again, feedback from the 2019 UAIM workshop on challenges. 46% of the challenges were recorded as being people, equal amount of process, and very much smaller group of challenges with technology. So again, our benefit is that we can draw on the workforce and organizational culture group to help with this change management process. And we keep reiterating the documented challenges that organizations are having with trying to think about change management. And again, strategic challenges, tactical and operational are all cited as challenges as well. Some of the off-the-shelf items that are out there, GE's Change Acceleration Process, or CAP, Six Sigma, which is Motorola, and GE also at one point did have implement Six Sigma, not only into manufacturing, but also into their professional services. Accenture Organization Change, and ADCAR, which has ProSci by ProSci. So we have a link to a 30-minute video on ADCAR, the video that Cello was talking about from DC Water. If anyone is interested in taking a look at that, that would
Yeah, it's on the slide, Cello.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cello or Scott, do you want to take this one, or you want me to go ahead?
You can go ahead.
You're doing
Okay.
good.
I am. Okay. So in terms of different types of organizations, right? They're these different categories: management, organizational structure, top management style, control system, and management reward emphasis. They're different phases that we go through to make our organization better. Normally, there are 5 phases, right? For public and public organizations and municipalities, however, we get to the point of phase 1 and phase 2. We can make or provide a service and sell that service. Our organizational structure sometimes can be informal. As we move forward, it becomes centralized and functional. Our management style is for public infrastructure or public services is very directive. Our control systems is that we have all these policies and standards and cost centers, and we have city charters and city managers that hold us accountable. And our salary and merit increases are how we're rewarded. That's, that's about the size of it. We don't get any ownership. When we think about our organization moving forward to become better and more inclusive, we look at phase 3, which is expanding the market. Well, how do you expand the market of a public works department for a city? You can't. Everybody wants water. Everybody needs to flush their toilet, and that's your market, and that's it. So we can't really implement some of the things in phase 3, by possibly decentralizing what we do. We could create divisions and areas or span of control in segments, but we can't really decentralize. It always comes back to that head of the municipality, whether it's a mayor or city manager. Reports and profit center. Again, this doesn't really work for us because we're here for the citizens. We may make profit, but the profit goes back into the infrastructure to benefit the citizens. And employees definitely on the rewards part of it, we don't get individual bonuses for the most part. So we're kind of stuck at phase 2, and we have to figure out how do we write our own definition of phase 3, 4, and 5 so that it works best for municipalities and for our sort of business. So how do we become innovative? What do we do in phase 3 and 4 to get us to that problem solving and innovation part of it on management at the management level. How do we then, write phase 3 and 4 so that we can become a matrix of teams that support each other? How do we get management to be more participative rather than directive or delegative? How do we get them to participate and be more involved with the boots on the ground so that they can then make decisions that benefit the organization in that manner? So what I think would be great for us is to try and develop our own phase 3 and 4 and 5. How do we get to 5? By modifying phase 3 and 4 in this schematic so that it works for a public institution. Does that make sense? Is that how does that? Any feedback in the chat on?
Nothing in the chat, but certainly welcome comments at this point. This is a model that basically says that the public sector is not exactly like the private sector. While ADCAR and others that are listed there are now beginning to be focused in the public sector too, that we have to recognize that there are differences. So if you look at maturity going from beginner to advanced, then as Ramona said, we're going to want to figure out what that looks like to this group and to us. Comments? Does that make sense?
It does.
Just one comment. So I particularly appreciate rubrics. That's how my mind processes information best. And the question on the table that Ramona proposed was describing how we as utilities could move from phase 2 to phases 3, 4, and 5. And I guess my reaction is more of a question. Do phases 3, 4, and 5 accurately reflect or describe where we want to be? I think your prompting questions were very much on point. I'm just not sure if 3, 4, and 5 are the descriptions where we want to be as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely correct. And that's exactly it. We need to rewrite 3, 4, and 5 to figure out where we want to be and
Beautiful.
What is it we have to do as an industry to
Right.
develop that path.
Right. Some like quick themes that come to mind as I heard you walk us through phase 2 and each of those categories is perhaps thinking of expanding our market in the context of not just being a water provider, a wastewater provider, but also a service provider, and also a steward of the environment,
Right.
and also, a partner with community organizations. So it's a different, I think, way to define expanding the market beyond just being a utility water provider, but also being a more active participant in the community. And then as far as the control system, I was thinking of that. I thought that was a pretty difficult one to kind of consider, but definitely customer satisfaction and perhaps even utility recognitions that demonstrate our affordable service, our quality service could be ways. So just wanted to react to this because I thought it was a really great slide. So thank you, Ramona.
Yeah, I think this is something that we probably should, as a work group, try to tackle. How do we rewrite this? How do we make this definitely more applicable to our industry?
This is Cello. I just want to say, Rebecca, you're exactly on point. And for the past more than a year, I've been working with Scott and Gustav Olsson and another contributor from Gustav Olsson is from Sweden and Pernilla Engelsson from Denmark on a book that we submitted to WEF and IWA. They anticipate that it'll be published by the end of the year. It's in there, you know. And one of the things in the introduction and forward that it says is, and I may take just a couple of minutes. When we look at how we make decisions, the things that the things you mention are the foundation for how we make decisions. Because decision science has two branches. It has the prescriptive, how one should make decisions, which is based on a rational model that is based on logic of consequence. If I buy this piece of land, let's say you have a piece of land, are you going to plant fruit trees? Are you going to build a house? Are you going to, build a swimming pool? And then the rational logic looks at what happens if I do this. So this is how a computer plays chess, for example. But this is not another branch of decision science is descriptive, that says how human beings actually make decisions. And it actually, the two people who won a Nobel Prize in economics, Kahneman and Tversky, decidedly showed that people make decisions subconsciously. And they usually ask themselves three questions. And then the first question is, who am I? And that is what you were addressing. We have to define what is our identity. Are we simply the sellers of services and sellers of water? Or are we members of the community? Or are we are we also there to protect the environment? That's a fundamental issue that then drives everything. So I don't want to get too far into this and waste too much time for people, but this is, and I always cite the same example, the water district where I work, in my day job, spent $450 million to encourage people to remove their lawns and to put in desert plants to reduce the need for water. But our the only way we get money is that when these 19 million people use water. So no private company will spend 450 million to reduce the need for their products. So if we keep looking for at private companies as a model, I think what Ramona is saying, it is a different, it's a different atmosphere, and I know Ramona spent part of her life in private sector, so she's familiar. So it's a different kind of thinking. So you were right on the money. It was a very, very excellent comment. Sorry to go too long.
No, that's okay. That's
Ramona,
okay. Yeah.
Ramona, this is just food for thought, but you were posing the question of we need to get past 2 and define what 3, 4, and 5 look like. And, you know, taking you back to the workforce organizational culture work that you participated in too, what we wound up doing was we wound up doing a workshop and identified what are those things. We came up with 400 of them, and we wound up narrowing them down that represented almost what would a 5 look like, or what were the major components of that. And then we kind of backed up from there. And, you know, we don't have to sit here and decide exactly how we're going to tackle this but today, but food for thought would be that we could, as a group, go through something similar and say, for this particular group and this representation of utilities, you know, in what are the components of change management, and what would you know, the positive attributes of that look like. So that's one comment. The other thing which you weren't going to cover today, but we're going to want to cover in the future, is that change is also a process that goes from where you are today to where you want to be, and how do you get there. And so, you know, if we that's another kind of track for this, so to speak, is to develop what that process looks like that we can use, and so that it can apply to the different improvement initiatives that are being done, for example, and can be integrated in there along with the organizational culture and workforce elements and technology elements.
Yeah, and I think if we can define what we look like in phase 5, then that directs the questions that and the process we implement. It affects the how we structure those 7 R's and what appropriate responses to those 7 R's are when we're developing our change management process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it definitely, if we can figure out what that phase 5 is, it will inform how we apply change management to get there. So,
Ramona, did you want me to go through the couple of 3 slides just on the that are coming next, just very quickly?
yes.
Okay, if you could go to slide 9.
There we go.
We've talked about, we're doing work on organizational culture and workforce. This is just a background from Frederic Laloux's book, Reinventing Organizations, where he outlined different paradigms, organizational culture paradigms for different industries and sectors. And you can see that it starts at the bottom with this organizational paradigm that's really, the model is the wolf pack, where very small number of people or a single person makes all the decisions. And there are still, that is a very ancient model of organizational. And that is still used today. You know, the examples here are, you know, street gangs and drug cartels and, you know, tribal militias and so forth. Then the next one is, if you could go to the next slide, it shows it in more detail, is really where we belong, which is the conformist, which is a type of organizational paradigm. The next ones that were on the previous slide were all private industry, but this is really the underlying model in public schools, traditional churches, government, and so forth. And they are really, the underlying paradigm model is of a military. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see that it dates all the way back. On the left side is something called the Greek phalanx, which is a formation and a set of rules that made, this is the Philip the Macedonian, he's the father of Alexander the Great. So that was constructed where, by selecting carefully the formation and the length of the spear was different depending on where your spot is, they made significant victories over much more numerous enemy. And on the right is the Roman legion, which was an advancement. And there were very strict rules about the size of the shield, about the size of the sword. You can see that they all have the same equipment. And you can see that there's a formation that the archers are in the back and so forth. So if you look at the characteristics of those paradigms, which is hierarchical, it's about stability, you follow the rules, it doesn't, you know, you can't be creative and come up with no shield or with a different kind of shield and a long sword. It doesn't work. There are clear roles, well-defined job descriptions, what you do in different situations. So the strength came from an organization, from the organization, and it's top-down command and control. You know, there was no debates really during these battles. So that is really what the kind of legacy of the models that we're dealing with today, and they may not work so well with the economy that we have today, that and with the society that we have today, that requires more flexibility, more, you know, and the rule and the nature and the society around us are all changing. So it was just to say that there's a reason why a lot of the utilities on the call today in general have very similar issues and problems very often because of the underlying structure. So this change management is going to be an amazing opportunity to integrate the stuff that's happening on the workforce and the organizational culture to kind of integrate that. So I just wanted to quickly go through that, and then we can go back to Ramona for the next slide. Thank you, Ramona.
So again, we talked about, as part of the survey, we asked which deliverables from this effort would be the most beneficial. And first was learning by example and applying a method in practice, collaborating and learning from our peers. Third was change readiness assessment, which Scott is going to give us a presentation on. Guidelines for change management, selecting an effective approach or method, and artifacts shared by other utilities. I think as we go through the process, maybe we work on developing what our 5 phases look like. I think we will definitely be able to apply that method in practice with some of our projects that we're going to do as case studies. I know for Baltimore City, we're going to be working on a procurement process. And I think as we start to develop that and bring the data to the team, we would love to have your input on moving that forward. And again, we come back to asking that question, which I think we have an answer to about change management. We have about 2 organizations that are doing using the ProSci. So we know that we have to kind of get out there and get some more artifacts on the other off-the-shelf items. Cello?
Yes. Last time I intended to give you a tour of where the different files are and stuff like that, and I couldn't because we ran out of time. This time I'm barely hanging on with my Microsoft Suite. I can't get the OneDrive to respond to me. I can't get PowerPoint to respond to me. So again, we'll have to postpone this to a later day. I'm very sorry about this. As far as I will send an email, we will send out an email. And if you have artifacts that you think may be useful to others, we'll have a folder where we can share. So each utility can say, well, these are the things that we're doing, and these are the things that documents that we've generated or that we use, and then share it with others. And our original reason for asking these questions was not to put you on the spot, but think if somebody said, well, we're using, GE CAP or something like that, we wanted to offer, see if the person would be willing to come to one of our next meetings and say, okay, this is how we're doing it. Similarly to this video that DC Water did on ProSci. And the one thing that I want to emphasize what Ramona said is that these methods, especially the reason were kind of really built around the drivers for private industry, and the reason why people in our sector tend to like ProSci is because it has a greater emphasis than others on the workforce and cultural issues and people. But I have to say that ProSci still is really being used something as an aid in project management, not as much in our effort. We definitely can look at whatever is good at ProSci. We're a little bit reluctant to recommend or promote tools that are proprietary and that one has to pay for, but we can look at the things that they do well, and I think we can combine, we can actually come up with something that's even more viable for our own purposes, because we will have these results from the work team of the organizational culture, and we'll also include the analysis of technology. So we can look at things holistically. And I'm not against ProSci. I'm also certified actually, but I think that we can adjust those thoughts and make them work within our overall framework. And I'll be quiet because I think I'm talking too much, and see if people have questions or comments. So if you would like to say, okay, this is what we're doing in our organization at our next meeting, let us know. The other thing is that next time, like Ramona mentioned, Scott will show something, a tool that was used to assess change readiness. And we will follow up with links to these files, which I was going to show you where they are, where the stuff is, but just reference and background. Again, not able to do that today. So we're working on these things that are highlighted in yellow. That's our scope for the next couple of 3 months, and then we will start by pilot implementation. To just, like Ramona mentioned, they would use it to apply to procurement, so we don't try to boil the ocean and attack the whole thing, but apply these techniques to a specific business function or process. And I think that would be like really scalable and useful. And any questions or comments?
I'm just going to supplement that to say that next time we should also be able to say, here is what a high level process looks like for change management, not to be overly prescriptive or say that it has to stay this way, or that we might not want to have more detail around it, or that we might not, as Ramona was saying, have these kind of topic areas that we want to make sure we're covering for change management. But we could also present that next time, along with whatever anybody else wants to volunteer that they're doing in their utilities. And then we can kind of determine where we want to go from there.
What I would like to do is for part of the core group is on that organizational improvement and development spreadsheet. Maybe we can come up with a team to work through it like we did in workforce and organizational culture, to come up with how do we rewrite that to fit us. And actually get a little bit more intensive work on actually developing that, because I think once we get to that, we can then develop, okay, what should this process look like for us?
That's a fantastic idea. And for the folks who are on the call now, we have a few names of the people who have volunteered to be on the core team, but please let us know, whether it's email to Ramona, and you can copy me if you'd like, and Scott, and because we would start scheduling meetings in the off weeks when we don't have the biweekly meetings. So then in that week, for that core group to work together, just like we did in the last on this, like Ramona says. I'm doing a lot of like Ramona says because she already hit the point. So, but yeah, that would be great. You can send us an email or put it into the chat line, whatever, so we know that we can reach you and count on you.
And Ramona Parjat had to leave the meeting. That was in the chat, but she participated in the workforce organizational culture team and has a lot of good, background. And she might want to participate on the core team as well.
Great. All righty. WEFTech workshop?
Yes, we're going to focus on 4 things at the WEFTech workshop. The first one will be on business processes, and then the second will be on technology, third one on workforce and organizational culture. And then the last one is going to be on change management, which Ramona will lead again, but we will unfortunately have no way to loop in people remotely. The only thing we're going to be able to do is just tape a presentation for the workforce in our culture and show it, but we will have no ability to have remote interaction. But we are going to hit these 4 topics. If you haven't, if you're still considering, I'm not pushing or anything, pressure, but if you're still considering whether to go to Chicago or not, then it would be great if you could join us in the workshop. And I think that's all we were going to cover. And just let us know who we can ping in order to have these discussions and work together on our next on developing the high level model and starting to define level 5 and stuff like that.
Yeah. Any comments, thoughts, direction changes? Anyone thinks we this is the time? It would be great if we could. I'm going to stop sharing. That way I can kind of, there we go.